My father kicked me out, saying I only inherited his old junkyard. What I found inside changed my life. The last thing my father ever said to me in public was, "You were always the family disappointment." Then he handed me the keys to a rusted junkyard in front of everyone at his retirement party. My brother Ethan got the company. My sister Claire got the beach house in Florida. And me, 40 acres of scrap metal, broken engines, and tetanus. The entire ballroom laughed. I wish I could say I walked away with dignity. Truth was, I stood there frozen while waiters avoided eye contact and my stepmother smirked into her champagne glass like she just won the lottery. "Dad?" I whispered. "Is this a joke?" He adjusted his cufflinks without even looking at me. "No. You wanted independence? Now you have it." That hurt more than I expected, because for years I kept trying to earn his approval. I worked in his company from age 19, missed birthdays, missed relationships, missed half my 20s sitting in gray offices fixing problems Ethan created. But in my father's eyes, Ethan was the golden son. I was just the stubborn daughter who asked too many questions. The guests started clapping awkwardly, as if humiliation was part of the entertainment package. Then my father leaned closer and quietly said something that changed everything. "Don't sell the junkyard." That was it. No explanation, no emotion, just a warning. 3 days later, security escorted me out of the company headquarters. My email access vanished. My bank account, tied to the company, froze. Even my apartment belonged to the business. By Friday night, I was sitting inside my 15-year-old Honda Civic, eating gas station crackers and staring at the rusted sign that read, "Riverside Auto Salvage." The junkyard. My inheritance. Rain poured across the windshield, while mountains of twisted metal sat like skeletons in the dark. I almost drove away. Then I remembered my father's face when he warned me not to sell it. Not sadness, fear. That bothered me. My father feared nothing. Not lawsuits, not bankruptcy, not losing people. So why would a pile of junk scare him? I unlocked the gate and drove inside. The place looked abandoned for years. Dead weeds crawled through old tires. Broken trucks sank into mud. A crooked office building leaned slightly to one side, like it had given up on life. Honestly, the entire place smelled like expired regrets. I laughed out loud for the first time in weeks, because somehow this disaster matched my life perfectly. Inside the office, dust covered everything. Filing cabinets, coffee mugs, old calendars from 2009. But one thing stood out immediately. The electricity worked. That made no sense. Someone had been paying the bills. I walked deeper into the office and found a light glowing under a backroom door. Every hair on my arm stood up. I knew this place was supposed to be empty. Slowly, I grabbed a rusted wrench from a table and pushed the door open. A man sat inside, calmly drinking coffee. Maybe mid-60s, gray beard, oil-stained jacket. Like he belonged there. He looked at me once and sighed. "Took you long enough." I nearly swung the wrench at his head. "Who are you?"
"Name's Walter." He pointed toward the chair across from him. "Sit down, kid. I'm not sitting anywhere until you explain why you're inside my property." He stared at me for a long moment before reaching into his pocket. Then he placed a small brass key on the table. "This," he said quietly, "is why your father kept the junkyard." My stomach tightened. "What does it open?" Walter's expression darkened. "Something people have already killed for." Outside, metal suddenly crashed somewhere deep in the yard. Walter instantly stood up.
The calm disappeared from his face. "They found you faster than I expected." A second crash echoed through the darkness. Closer this time. And then headlights appeared outside the office windows. 3 black SUVs. If you're enjoying this story so far, tell me, what time is it for you right now? And where are you watching from? I'm curious to know. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. The SUV doors opened at the same time. 6 men stepped out. Black jackets, heavy boots, no hesitation. The kind of people who didn't knock first. Walter killed the office lights instantly. "Stay quiet," he whispered. My heart slammed against my ribs while headlights swept across the dirty windows.
One of the men shouted, "Search everything!" Another crash exploded outside. Metal screamed across concrete. I looked at Walter. Who are these people? "They used to work with your father." "Used to?" Walter gave a humorless laugh. "People like them don't exactly retire." Footsteps crunched outside the office. Closer. Closer. Then, silence. I stopped breathing completely when the office doorknob slowly turned. Locked. Whoever stood outside tested it once. Twice. Then, a deep voice said, "We know she's here." Walter leaned toward me. "Back window, now." We crawled through a narrow hallway stacked with old paperwork and broken radios. My shoes stuck to the floor from years of oil and dirt. Behind us, the front office door suddenly exploded inward. Wood shattered everywhere. I nearly screamed. Walter shoved me toward the back room. "Hurry!" We climbed out a tiny window behind the building just as flashlights flooded the office. Rain hammered the junkyard while Walter pulled me between giant towers of crushed cars. "What's happening?" I whispered desperately. "Your father hid something 30 years ago. And this key opens it?" "Yes." "Then why give it to me?" Walter stopped walking. "Because your father trusted only one person in the family." I stared at him. He hated me. "No," Walter said quietly. "He was protecting you." That hit harder than I expected, because my father never protected anyone. Not my mother, not me, not even himself. We ducked behind an overturned school bus while flashlights swept past nearby. One of the men yelled, "Find the girl!" Another voice answered, "Boss wants the key tonight." Walter turned to me fast. "You cannot let them take it." "Walter, I don't even know what it is." "You will." "That's not helpful." A flashlight beam suddenly crossed the side of the bus. Walter grabbed my arm. "Run." We bolted through the junkyard. Metal and mud flew under my boots while men shouted behind us. I heard footsteps gaining fast. Then gunshots exploded into the night. Actual gunshots. One bullet slammed into a car beside my head and showered sparks everywhere. Oh my God! Walter dragged me behind an engine block. "Move! I thought you said this was about a key, not World War III. Despite everything, Walter laughed. "Your father always said you panic exactly like your mother." For some reason, hearing that almost made me cry. We reached the far end of the junkyard near an old storage warehouse chained shut with massive locks. Walter handed me the brass key. "Open it." "What's inside?" "You're about to find out." My hands shook violently as I unlocked the chain. The warehouse door groaned open inch by inch. At first, all I saw was darkness. Then lightning flashed outside and illuminated
dozens of identical steel containers stacked inside the warehouse. Every container had my father's company logo stamped on it. I stepped closer to one. The lock was already broken. Slowly, I opened the lid and froze. Gold. Bars and bars of gold. Enough to buy mansions. Enough to destroy lives. Enough to explain everything. My father hadn't left me junk. He'd left me a fortune. Walter looked exhausted. Your father hid it during the financial collapse back in the 90s. Illegal money, dirty partners, dangerous people. I stared at the gold, speechless. How much is here? Over 200 million. My knees nearly gave out. Then, footsteps echoed behind us. We turned. One of the armed men stood at the warehouse entrance, pointing a gun directly at my face. But the person beside him shocked me even more. My brother, Ethan, smiling. I told Dad she'd eventually find it, he said calmly. Then he raised his own gun at Walter and pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Walter dropped instantly. I screamed and rushed toward him, but Ethan pointed his gun at my head. Don't. Rain pounded the metal roof while the armed men spread out around the gold containers. My brother looked completely calm, like this was a business meeting, not attempted murder. Walter groaned weakly on the floor, blood soaking through his jacket near the shoulder. Alive. Thank God. Ethan noticed my relief and smirked. I wasn't trying to kill him. Yet. I stared at him in disbelief. You shot an old man. He should have minded his business 30 years ago. The man beside Ethan stepped forward. Tall, bald, scar across his neck. Definitely the type of guy children would draw if asked to sketch a criminal. He looked me up and down. So this is the daughter your father trusted? Ethan rolled his eyes. Dad didn't trust her. He used her. No, Walter coughed from the floor. Your father knew Ethan would steal everything. Ethan kicked Walter hard in the ribs. Shut up! Something inside me finally snapped. Not fear, not sadness. Anger. Years of it. You know what's funny? I said, staring at Ethan. Dad spent your entire life treating you like a prince, and you still turned into a pathetic thief. Ethan's face darkened instantly. You think you deserved anything? Dad built everything. You just complained all the time. I worked for him while you gambled company money in Vegas. That was one mistake. You crashed a Ferrari into a fountain. It was my birthday. One of the armed men actually laughed. Even the scarred guy looked disappointed. Ethan pointed the gun at me harder. You always thought you were smarter than everyone. No, I said quietly. Just smarter than you. That did it. He charged toward me furiously and made the biggest mistake of his life. Because while yelling at me, he stopped paying attention to Walter. Walter suddenly grabbed a metal chain from the floor and swung it straight into Ethan's legs. Ethan crashed hard. His gun slid across the concrete directly toward me. I grabbed it first. Now everyone froze. The warehouse went silent, except for Rain. The scarred man slowly raised his hands. Easy. Ethan stared at me from the ground. You won't shoot. Honestly, for one terrifying second, I considered it. Not because of the gold. Because of every year he spent helping my father humiliate me. Every insult, every betrayal, every moment I felt small in my own family. Then I saw my reflection in the gun barrel. Angry, exhausted. becoming exactly like them. I lowered the weapon. Get out. Ethan blinked. What? Take your people and leave.
The scarred man frowned. And the gold? I looked around the warehouse. $200 million. Enough money to ruin the rest of my life. Suddenly, I understood my father completely. The paranoia, the cruelty, the fear. This gold poisoned everyone around it. Walter slowly stood beside me, holding his bleeding shoulder. Kid, think carefully. I am. I looked directly at Ethan. You want it so badly? Fine. Take it. Ethan's eyes widened. You're serious? There's only one condition. What? You never contact me again. For the first time in years, my brother looked genuinely confused. Because greedy people understand money. They don't understand walking away from it. 30 minutes later, the SUVs disappeared into the storm, carrying millions in stolen gold. And honestly, I felt lighter watching it leave. Walter sat beside me on the warehouse floor, wrapping his shoulder wound. You know your father planned this, right? What do you mean? He knew Ethan would come. Knew greed would expose him. I stared into the rain quietly. Then why leave the junkyard to me? Walter smiled faintly. Because you were the only one strong enough to walk away. 3 months later, I sold the junkyard legally. Not for millions, just enough to start over. I opened a small repair garage outside town. Nothing glamorous, but honest. Peaceful. Mine. Sometimes I still think about my father, about whether he loved me in his own broken way. Then I remember his final lesson. Some inherit money. Others inherit freedom. And freedom turned out to be worth far more. If this story shocked you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional stories with twists and endings you'll never see coming.